So good morning. I just want to welcome everyone to another show with Coffee with the Chiropractor. It's your host, Patrick Hogg. And we have a really super special guest with us here today. He doesn't actually know this, and I'm only just about to tell him now, but I genuinely have a chiro crush on this guy. He does so much for our profession, and I don't think he actually realizes just how much people see of him around the profession. But he has been working as the vice president of the UCA. He's a fellow AEC graduate who graduated in 2010. He's also you were the student rep for the UCA as well.
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So he's done tons of work helping to mold the future of our profession along the way. He's also a world speaker in chiropractic. He's also working with the police and the fire forces in enabling them to live healthier and wellness-based lives. And it is our guest, Tom Waller. So Tom, if I've missed anything, can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about you?
I think it was a great introduction. I'm honoured that you said that, Patrick. I really appreciate that validation. It's been such a pleasure to serve so many people over the years. What can I add to that? I am a husband and an absolute lover of nature, I think is what I add to that. And none of it would be possible without my amazing wife, Sarah. And none of it would be possible without me getting dipped in nature on a regular basis. But apart from that, you pretty much got it all right. Does it really matter? But thank you.
That's absolutely my pleasure. And look, for those of you that can't actually see, me and Tom actually share exactly the same facial hair as well.
So beautiful ginger locks, love it.
So we're going to move on, and we're going to try and just get some value for our listeners today. And so obviously it's something really interesting, chiropractic, because everyone gets in for such a different reason, and there's a massive spectrum in chiropractic, and there's huge opinions on what chiropractic actually is. But maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your story, like how you entered into chiropractic and how you basically progressed through the years.
Great question, and it's really interesting. Oftentimes you ask chiropractors, you've got these amazing backstories of how they got into chiropractic. And for me, do you know what it was? Is actually my mum saying maybe I should become a chiropractor. I'd seen a chiropractor as a child. It really helped me with headaches at the time. But I had a career set on the military as a Royal Marine, and that's what I really wanted to do with my life. But I kind of came to the decision point. I applied for both and got accepted for officer training. The same weekend I got accepted at AECC, and I made the decision to take AECC. And I have not looked back. I've really enjoyed my time so far as a chiropractor. Let's say I haven't worked for the last 10 years, which has been brilliant. I've just been enjoying it. I certainly started out very different from where I am now. I started out as someone who was quite mechanistic, if we understand that, being that I just focused on pain. But I got disillusioned when I started seeing other things happen, but I couldn't say it. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't rationalize it. And that led me on a path of discovery. And I suppose the big thing that has always been there for me is I like to disrupt things a little bit. I like to challenge things a lot. So that kind of led me to the journey of really figuring out what I believe it is and where I am today.
You do quite a lot of stuff with like philosophy-based clubs and stuff like that as well, because you work a lot with Benny Matthews, and there's someone else that I've seen in the, is it the A1 Philosophy Club as well?
Yeah, so Benny and I are great friends. I had the privilege of doing one of my associateships with Benny, which was amazing, down in Cardiff. When I moved up to Lincoln, there was not really anything up here, so I created the philosophy. Well, I did actually have one in Bristol as well. So for about 4 years, I ran philosophy groups for chiropractors every month. We used to bring people in from around the world, online and some in-house. I suppose it phased out of the last year or so, just purely because of my time being taken up elsewhere. But yeah, that's something that we ran called the A1 Philosophy, which may come back. Now my time has increased slightly.
Yeah, like everyone's time's increased over the last few months, hey? Cool. So look, and so people have actually obviously seen through the podcasts that there's huge differences in why people become chiropractors. But one thing that pretty much every chiropractor can agree on, the reason why they became a chiropractor is because they want to improve. Not a lot of the time they want to improve their own health, but they want to improve the health of their community and stuff as well. So tell us a little bit more about your routine. Like, what is it that you like to do about yourself? So you actually said something about you like being out in nature. And I think that's a really important point, because people don't necessarily always click or think that being in nature actually has an impact on their health. But maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what you like to do, and maybe a little bit more as to why you feel that's so important.
Wow. We got all day. Shoot. This is going to be good. So what do I like to do? There's a couple of sayings that I love that really dictate how I live my life. So, I write a journal every morning, and the journal starts with, I'm healthy, I'm happy, and full of abundant life. So that's my intention for my life. I write my intentions for the day, and then I always finish by saying today is not repeated tomorrow. So I genuinely believe that we should make every day count. And the way that we make it count comes back to another great saying, and I can't remember who said this one, but it goes along the lines of live today like you will die tomorrow, and learn today like you will live forever. So if I get to the end of each day and I've done something where I feel like I've lived, or I've done something where I feel that I have learned, then it is a day well spent. If we understand that the average human being only has 30,000 days on this planet, 30,000, that is it. If you now take off the years that you've lived so far, that's not many that we have left. And the only way that you can really make those days count is to live them in the present moment, and essentially try and expand time. And the way we expand time is the understanding of the concept that it doesn't exist in the future, it doesn't exist behind us, or that it exists right now. And if we focus in on that moment, it increases. So I suppose that pre-frame is really how I choose to implement actions within my day. So some of the stuff that I will always do is movement, and I will always learn. Getting out in nature is a big part of tapping into self, bringing my body into a state where I'm in flow, which essentially means I'm tipping into these alpha and theta brainwave states, which is where we are most creative, but also most open to suggestible thought that comes down. So I can see I'm going off on one. I'm not sure.
It's really interesting, because I like what you're saying, because it kind of ties in with the concept of where your energy. I'm just trying to think. Where your energy goes, that's what grows. Where your attention flows, that's what grows. And like to put all of that attention on the present, like you can see, then you're going to grow in the present. You're literally your presence. So, when someone says that someone appears present, they're living in that moment. That's why they appear. That's why they have that presence. It's really interesting.
If you meet someone who's genuinely energetic, it's because they're energetic because they're connecting with you with energy at that time. Like, it's not because they're scattered over here or scattered over there. And it comes into the healthy practices. Like, currently the healthiest I could be? Am I being attuned to that? Am I living there? Am I making sure I'm doing my exercise daily? Am I making sure I'm doing my gratitude? Am I making sure I'm doing my journaling? Am I learning? Am I contributing to somebody else's life? Habits that I have, and I have routines within those habits, but it's not necessarily the routines that define us. It's us. It's our habits. It's what we do on a daily basis, whether it's a great day or whether it's a good day.
And by the way, I know that Tom's not lying about these things, because we've been on many a coaching call together, and his camera's been switched off, and all of a sudden he's wanted to ask a question, the camera's switched on, and there's him trawling along on his little spin bike that he's got at home. So I know, and he's a great user of his time. If he knows that he's not necessarily going to be able to get out and do these things, he doubles himself up. He finds ways to actually leverage and use his time, which, to be honest, like you said, we've got, did you say it was 30,000 days?
30,000 days, yeah.
Look, if we make excuses and put it off to tomorrow, what could have been done today, then you potentially missed out on something huge.
I agree, and I'm going to caveat on that slightly, because a lot of people therefore end up being busy, productive. And the most important in my week is a Wednesday morning. I am the busiest on a Wednesday morning. I'm so busy that nobody can get an appointment with me. Nobody can get a call with me. And I'm really busy doing nothing. And that's so important. People assume that you know, to be productive, you must be working hard. Like, you know, you're not the first person this week to say, I'm really productive. And I'm sitting back there going, I could be working harder. I take a full morning off and do absolutely nothing midweek. But that's what drives the productivity.
Mm-hmm.
You get to the end of the day and go, well, yeah, I got all that done, but did I give time for myself? And a big part of the coaching that I do with people is, you know, I'm essentially aim to help them create outrageous success, however they choose to define it, with one rule of engagement, which means, and the one rule of engagement is that they have to be congruent. They have to be doing every action for themselves. And part of that is self-care. So we don't end up being the person who's all going over doing everything and then ends up sick and then comes crashing down.
Because this is quite common, even with chiropractors, like they burn out. Burnout is really common.
Yeah, and the reason I set up the congruency coaching is because that's where I went. You know, I, from the outside, looked like I had an amazing practice, huge, busy, talking everywhere, doing all this kind of stuff. And I ended up getting pre-cancer, like my bowel. Yeah, and the universe just slapped me around the face and said, you know what, are you actually lining up all your actions with your beliefs? Are you being congruent in everything that you do? Or are you trying to achieve this state of success because of how it looks to other people?
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that about you, so thanks for sharing.
Well, it's a pleasure. But that's the lesson that is now what I teach. Because I do believe, and since going through that recheck and learning to be more congruent to myself, not only am I healthier, not only do I have more time to enjoy the things I want to enjoy with family, my wife, with nature, but I also have a busier practice. I also have other businesses that have grown. And it all comes back down to, you know, am I being congruent? So my mission in life really is to help people get to whatever success they want to achieve without sacrificing what they truly love to do in the process.
That's amazing. That's a nice mission to have, right?
Yeah, that's a great mission now. I do enjoy it.
So, look, we've covered a lot about what you do and what you teach people, but maybe someone wants to actually take some steps to implementing some of these things that you're suggesting. So maybe you can give our listeners a couple of tips as to how they could maybe implement some of this stuff today, tomorrow, or in the next couple of weeks. Maybe they want to change some things, but maybe you could give them some tips on how they could actually change that.
Great question. Great question. I'm a big believer in simplicity, and I'm a big believer in using the right times to do the right things. So a lot of people do things like affirmations, and a lot of people do visualization and dream boarding, all this stuff. They do it when they're in their most conscious, awake state. The problem is that never changes brain biochemistry, physiology, or how the body really works in the trance. So the way to really tap into your potential is to bookend your day. So you imagine if you've got a bookshelf, and you've got all these books lined up on the bookshelf, and at each end to keep those books upright are some bookends. Some wooden structures, or you might have chucked some plants there to do that, but there's something to keep those books upright. So this bookshelf represents your day, and your day might start off with a drama. You then go on to read a romance, you then go on to read some kind of action, you then read a horror, and then you read another romance, and then it's bedtime. And that might be how your day ebbs and flows with meetings, with dealing with complaints, with dealing with loved ones. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you start and end the day exactly the same way, you've set your precedent on how that will go. So, yeah, I read a sign years ago, and the sign said, happiness is not a destination, it is a state of mind. Genuinely say, I've not had a bad day since. I have great days and I have good days. That's not to say shit doesn't come my way, but it's how you look at it. And if you understand stress physiology, you've got about 45 seconds to be angry, and then you know you're now pushing into a conscious decision to be angry. But these bookends are super important. As we wake up in the morning, we go from being asleep to being awake. Our brain is going through a change in brainwave state. It's moving through what's called alpha and theta. And alpha and theta are really, really suggestible brainwave states. So what we have here is a beautiful moment in time to flood our brain with the right stuff, but also be quiet and listen to what our brain is telling us. Not from the subconscious, but what we should refer to as the superconscious, that bit that sits above our conscious mind. It's not subconscious, it's better than us because it regulates and controls every function of us on a day-to-day basis. So it is our superconscious. If we are in alpha and theta as we are waking up, most of us will wake up in the morning, and the way we choose to bookend our day is to wake up in the morning and shut off the alarm. And as you shut off the alarm, you say to yourself, crap, it's Tuesday, I don't want to get up at this time. The first thought you put in your mind is a negative one. You then might get to Wednesday, the alarm goes off and negative. Now, it might get you wrong. You might be the person who wakes up in the morning, turns off that alarm, and you're like super happy, like, yes, today's going to be a great day. Downstairs, you turn the news on because you want to get updated. But when was the last time you saw any good news? It doesn't exist. Again, you flooded this suggestive brain with negativity. Again, probably the majority of people in here don't watch the news. So they've woken up, they've said hallelujah, they haven't watched the news, they pick up their phone, they start scrolling, and they realize that nobody liked their comment. Negative thought. So what we have to do is in the first 30 to 60 minutes of the morning, as our brain is moving through alpha and theta, is suggestible, is flood it with what we want. What we want is not necessarily the Lamborghini or the house or the boat. What we want is, how do we want to show up in this world? Do you want to be a healthy, happy version of yourself? Do you want to be a person of significance and contribution? Do you want to live your day with this direction? And you affirm that choice. You learn something educational. You move your body to stimulate the brain. You hydrate your body to get your body firing and functioning. And you get all of that done in the first 30 to 60 minutes of the morning. So that you've now built a resilient body that goes into a day that doesn't always go the way you want. But if you were to open that book that is a horror or is a drama, your body is in a state where it can deal with it. And you might have a whole bookshelf of horrors. And you get to that end of the day, and you get the chance to then decide what the last chapter will be. And as your body is moving back through theta and alpha, as it moves towards sleep, you remind yourselves the things that were good in that day, even if it's just one thing, and of the things that you are truly grateful for in life, and you start again.
It's amazing. Spoken by like a true believer.
Yeah, yes.
And it's amazing because do you know what? Like Tom isn't the first person to talk about this. There are like multiple people that will talk about this. I know Wayne Todd spoke about this in his book, The Sympathetic Dominance. Joe Dispenza talks about it a lot in his books. And look, the physiology is apparent. We have an autonomic nervous system for parasympathetic and sympathetic. And, these kinds of things are going to change your brain. But like you say, the times that you're going to be most influential is coming in and out of sleep. And that's going to you can have huge impacts on your life just by spending that 15 to 20 minutes. It doesn't necessarily need to be an hour. But you take that first 15, 20 minutes and write the things that you're grateful for. Your brain is already concentrating the physiology of that already. I love that. It was just such a nice way to start a day and go about your life. So I just wanted to ask you a question that I find this really interesting. I call this the Terminator question. So for people that have seen the Terminator had that opportunity to go back in time and tell him in the past, like, this is what's going to happen in the future if you don't do this. Now, if you had that opportunity to go back to Tom as a student, what would you tell yourself so that you didn't make the same mistakes coming back round?
Dude, I made so many mistakes. And to be honest, there's only one mistake. There's only one regret in my entire life, and that is trying to say this without tearing up. The opportunity to go and see my granddad when he was dying, and I said to Mum, I said, "No, I'm going to go out with the boys tonight. I'll see Granddad tomorrow." That day didn't come, and he passed that night. And I suppose that's the only regret, because I think everything else I truly see as a learning opportunity. And I think the advice I'd have to myself is just fail faster. Just fail faster. Like I'm not going to tell people to not make mistakes or try and live their life this way, because I think we need to go through that. I think that's part of growing up. I interviewed someone on my podcast the other day, and I asked him, "How much do you want to wrap your kids up in cotton wool, but also how much do you want them to learn the lessons at the same time?" And it's that real difficult. What do I choose? But and like Ryan came on the podcast, and I said to Ryan about this, and he talks about the silkworm that goes into the chrysalis. And out, if you were to cut that chrysalis and allow it to fly, it would die because it hasn't had the struggle. I would just say fail faster. Be prepared to take the risk and fail faster. Make mistakes and learn from them, but just do it quicker.
Mm-hmm. That's actually really interesting that you should say that. I did a live this week I don't know whether you've ever seen the picture of the little man in the mine, like that close to them. He decides to turn away.
Yeah.
The thing is you're okay to fail. Like, he never found the gem, but he doesn't know whether he gave up just that little bit too early.
Yeah, exactly. So true.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so look, I want to give Tom the opportunity, because I know that Tom obviously has a beautiful practice. It's in Lincoln, right? Oh, I lost you.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Good. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to, if people wanted to reach out, so obviously you have your mentoring group, you have your coaching group, you have your clinic. Maybe if people wanted to learn a little bit more about you, I know, again, you've got your own podcast as well. Maybe you want to just tell our listeners a little bit more about, if they wanted to get in touch and listen to things from you, how maybe they can go about that. And what we'll do is we'll make sure we put those in the descriptions below.
Really appreciate that, Patrick. Thank you. And, you know, I think what you're doing, bringing experts together, is incredible. And I do very similar on my podcast. So the podcast is the Dr. Tom Show. It's on iTunes, the Dr. Tom Show. If you want to find out more about me, the website is beginfindingyou.com. Beginfindingyou.com. And then my Facebook is Dr. Tom Finding You, and Instagram is Dr. Tom Waller. So I suppose the best place to really find what I'm doing would be my Instagram, or the website beginfindingyou.com is where people could start.
Amazing. Look, I've had great fun this morning. So I'm just going to ask you one last question, and that is, if you have like a quote or a mantra or a saying that you can leave our listeners with, or some parting words of wisdom that you can leave our listeners with, just to finish up with the show.
Great. I always love this last question. I always wait in anticipation and trepidation as to what it's going to be. But they're pearls of wisdom, like, so many. But I think the art of being congruent is so true. You know, it's never about finding something new to improve what you're going through, your state or your life. It's about discovering what was already within you. It's so important. So I'd encourage people to spend time in discovering self, finding self, and understand that, you know, everybody has the power in their voice and in their hands to change the world, so long as they find it within themselves to do so. So thank you very much, Patrick. I really, really enjoyed today. It's been brilliant. That's
been beautiful, eh? Hey, look, you know what the best thing about this is for me as well, is I get to learn from some incredible people as well. You know, like, not only are my listeners getting to learn something, I get to learn every single time I jump on one of these calls with someone. So it's been amazing to have you today.
It's such a great quality in you, Patrick, is being humble, and you know, you're already light years ahead of where your peers are, and that being humble so far. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely, my pleasure. And look, I hope to do it again at some point. So for those that have been listening with us this morning, I just want to say a massive thank you, and a massive thank you for Tom for jumping on the show with us. And that's all that we've got time for today with Coffee with the Chiropractor. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you, Tom.
Great. Thank you very much.